Welcome to our deep dive into conquering procrastination. We're tackling this beast head-on with Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog. It's a book packed with 21 tactics to boost your productivity, ready to stop feeling overwhelmed by your to-do list, and actually start making progress on those big, scary goals.
I think we all are.
Let's dive in.
It's fascinating how Tracy starts by emphasizing the power of goal clarity. He doesn't just say, know what you want. He really digs into the psychology of it. He insists you actually write down your goals. No vague wishes allowed.
It's almost like making a contract with yourself, isn't it? Putting it in writing makes it feel more real, more concrete.
Exactly. And there's actual science behind this. Studies have shown that writing down your goals increases your chances of achieving them. It forces you to clarify your thinking, solidify your commitment, and it creates a visual reminder that you can refer back to.
Okay, so we have our clearly defined goals written down. Now what? Does Tracy jump right into action?
Not quite. He lays out a specific 7-step formula. And it's this structured approach that really sets Eat That Frog apart. It's not just about motivation, it's about having a system.
All right, let's hear it. What are these 7 steps?
First, you decide exactly what you want. No ambiguity, no, I kind of wanna. Tracy stresses the importance of being crystal clear about the outcome you desire.
So that's step 1. Makes sense. You got to know where you're going before you can map out the route. What's next?
Step 2 is where the magic of writing comes in. You write it down. And not just on a scrap of paper, Tracy recommends using a proper notebook or journal.
I'm seeing a theme here. Tracy is all about putting pen to paper. I have to admit I'm more of a digital list person. But there's something appealing about the tangibility of writing things down.
There's a certain psychological weight to it, and it engages different parts of your brain, which can help with memory and retention.
Okay, I'm sold on the writing part. What's step 3?
Setting a deadline. Without a deadline, there's no urgency, no real commitment. Tracy is adamant about this. A goal without a deadline is just a wish.
This is where things start to get real, right? A deadline puts that fire under you.
Exactly. And it also helps you break down your goal into smaller, more manageable chunks. Which leads us to step 4, listing out everything you need to do to reach your goal.
So it's like brainstorming all the possible steps involved, no matter how small or insignificant they might seem.
Precisely. And don't worry about order or priority at this stage. Just get everything down on paper.
Okay, so we have our goal, our deadline, and our massive list of tasks. What's step 5?
This is where we bring order to the chaos. Step 5 is organizing that list into a plan. Figure out the sequence of actions, what needs to happen first, what depends on what, and so on.
This is where the visual aspect of having it all written down really helps, right? You can literally see the steps laid out in front of you.
Absolutely. And as you create this plan, you'll likely identify gaps in your knowledge or resources. Maybe you need to do some research, take a course, or reach out to someone for help.
So step 5 is not just about sequencing tasks. It's also about identifying potential roadblocks and planning for them. What's next? Do we finally get to take action?
Yes. Step 6 is all about taking that first step. Tracy is a firm believer in the power of momentum. Even a small action can break the inertia of procrastination and get you moving in the right direction.
This is where a lot of people get stuck, right? They overthink it, they wait for the perfect moment, and they end up doing nothing.
Exactly. And that's why Tracy emphasizes the importance of doing something every single day that moves you towards your goal. Even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, the key is to maintain that daily momentum.
It's like building a muscle, isn't it? The more you exercise that action muscle, the stronger it becomes.
Precisely. And that brings us to the final step, which is really about weaving this goal into the fabric of your life. Step 7 is to resolve to do something every single day that moves you towards your major goal.
So it's not about massive action. It's about consistency. And this ties into research on habit formation, right? Small, consistent actions create lasting change.
Exactly. It's about making progress inevitable by making it a part of your daily routine.
Okay, so we've got our goals clearly defined and a solid plan in place. Now let's talk about how to actually execute on that plan, because that's where the real challenge lies.
This is where Tracy really shines. He debunks the myth of working better under pressure. He argues that planned work is far more efficient and less stressful in the long run.
I think a lot of us fall into that trap of thinking we thrive under pressure. But if we're honest with ourselves, it's usually more about scrambling to catch up than it is about peak performance.
Absolutely. And there's a real cost to that kind of reactive approach. It leads to burnout, mistakes, and missed opportunities.
So how do we break free from that cycle and embrace a more planned and proactive approach?
Tracy introduces a principle he calls the 10-90 rule. It states that every minute you spend in planning can save you 10 minutes in execution.
So for every hour you spend planning, you could potentially save 10 hours in execution. That's incredible. But how do we actually put this into practice?
Tracy advocates for a system of lists. He recommends starting with a master list, which captures all your goals and ideas, then breaking that down into monthly, weekly, and daily lists.
I'm starting to see how this all fits together. You have your big picture goals, and then you break them down into smaller, more manageable chunks, using these lists as your guide.
Precisely. And he suggests making your daily list the night before, allowing your subconscious mind to work on it while you sleep.
It's like setting your intentions for the day and priming your brain for action. This is making a lot of sense to me.
Good. Now to really supercharge your efforts, let's explore the 80-20 rule, a core concept in Eat That Frog.
Okay, this is one I've heard before, but I'm always eager to learn more about how to apply it effectively.
It's also known as the Pareto principle, and it states that 20% of your efforts yield 80% of your results.
So it's about identifying that crucial 20% and really focusing on those high-impact activities. But how do we do that in a practical way?
Think about your to-do list. What are the items that will truly move the needle on your goals? Those are your frogs.
So for someone running their own business, it might be landing a major client or launching a new product.
Exactly. And for a student, it might be completing a major assignment or studying for a crucial exam.
This is starting to click for me. It's not about doing more, it's about being strategic and focusing on the tasks that will have the biggest impact.
Precisely. And Tracy encourages us to be ruthless about this.
Yeah.
Identify that top 20%. And for now, let go of the trivial many. That's not to say those tasks aren't important, but they're not the priority right now.
This is such a liberating concept. It releases that guilt of feeling like you need to do everything perfectly all at once.
Exactly. It's about giving yourself permission to focus on what truly matters.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to productivity. I love it.
Now, another fascinating aspect of Tracy's approach is how he connects motivation to consequences. He argues that successful people understand the long-term implications of their actions.
So it's about thinking beyond the immediate gratification and considering the bigger picture.
Exactly. Tracy suggests asking yourself a powerful question. What are the consequences of doing or not doing this task?
That really cuts to the core of it, doesn't it? It forces you to confront the potential downside of procrastination.
It does. And it also helps you clarify your priorities. The tasks with the biggest potential negative consequences, if not done, those become your biggest, ugliest frogs.
This is starting to make a lot of sense. It's not just about getting things done. It's about understanding the why behind our actions and aligning our efforts with our long-term goals.
Exactly. It's about making conscious choices that move us closer to the life we want to create.
This is brilliant. Okay, so we've got this framework of goal clarity, planning, the 80-20 rule, and consequences driving motivation. But let's face it, most of us still struggle with managing that ever-growing to-do list. Does Tracy have any advice for taming that beast?
He does. He introduces a system called the ABCDE method, which provides a clear framework for prioritizing your tasks and making sure you're focusing on the right things at the right time.
This sounds promising. I'm all about systems and frameworks, especially when it comes to managing my workload. Tell me more.
It's all about assigning a priority level to each task on your list, which brings clarity and helps you focus on the right things at the right time.
I love a good system. Break it down for me. How does it work?
Each task gets a letter, A, B, C, D, or E. A tasks are your biggest, ugliest frogs, the ones with serious consequences if not done. B tasks are still important, but have milder consequences.
Okay, so if we think back to the 80-20 rule, those A tasks are likely falling into that crucial 20% that drives the majority of our results, right?
Exactly. Then we have C tasks, which are those nice to-dos, but with no real impact on your goals. D tasks are those you can delegate, and E tasks can be eliminated altogether.
I'm already seeing how this could be a game changer for my to-do list. It's like decluttering my mind just by assigning those letters. But what about those A tasks that still feel daunting?
Tracy provides a couple of brilliant techniques for breaking down those big, scary frogs into more manageable bites. He calls them the salami slice and the Swiss cheese methods.
I'm intrigued by these names. Tell me more.
The salami slice method is all about breaking a large task into smaller, sequential steps. Think of it like eating a salami, one thin slice at a time.
This makes a lot of sense psychologically, right? Instead of facing the whole monstrous task, you're just focusing on that one slice.
Precisely. And often, Once you complete one slice, you gain momentum and motivation to tackle the next, and so on. It becomes less about willpower and more about that feeling of accomplishment.
I can see how that would work.
Oh.
What about the Swiss cheese method?
This one's a bit different. Instead of focusing on a specific portion, you commit to working on the task for a set amount of time. Even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, you're essentially punching a hole in that big block of cheese.
This is brilliant for those days when you feel overwhelmed or have limited time. It takes away the pressure of completing the whole thing and allows you to make progress in smaller increments.
Exactly. And both methods tap into our brain's natural desire for completion. We get a little hit of dopamine, that feel-good hormone, every time we check something off our list, no matter how small.
It's like those games where you level up. Even if it's just a small achievement, it keeps you motivated to keep playing. I can see how this could be applied to tackling those A tasks.
Now, another key aspect Tracy emphasizes is the importance of creating large chunks of time for those high-value activities. He calls this flow time, uninterrupted periods where you can truly focus on your most important work.
This resonates with me. I've often felt my most productive when I can completely immerse myself in a task without distractions. But in our busy lives, how do we actually create these pockets of flow time?
It requires intentionality. Tracy recommends scheduling these blocks in your calendar, treating them like important appointments that you wouldn't dream of missing.
So instead of letting our days get hijacked by urgent but less important tasks, we're proactively carving out time for what truly matters.
Exactly, and during those flow time blocks, it's crucial to eliminate distractions. Turn off your phone, close your email, and let those around you know that you're not to be disturbed.
It's about creating a sacred space for deep work. I love that. But I have to ask, what about those inevitable moments throughout the day? When we find ourselves with small pockets of downtime, waiting in line, commuting, things like that.
Tracy's brilliant at reframing those moments as gifts of time. Instead of scrolling through social media or mindlessly checking email, he encourages us to use them strategically.
So carry a notebook or use the Notes app on your phone to jot down ideas, brainstorm solutions, or even tackle small chunks of those bigger tasks.
Exactly. Even 5 minutes here and there can add up to significant progress over time. It's about making every minute count.
This is such a practical approach.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're being strategic with our time, breaking down those big tasks and carving out flow time. But what about that inner drive, that sense of urgency that pushes us to take action? How do we cultivate that?
Tracy is a big advocate for cultivating what he calls a bias for action. It's about being proactive and moving with purpose.
This isn't about rushing or being stressed, right? It's more about an internal shift in mindset.
Exactly. It's about developing that inner drive to get things done efficiently and effectively. And one of the simplest yet most powerful techniques he recommends is to simply repeat the words, do it now, do it now, do it now.
It sounds almost silly, but I can see how it could be effective. It's like a mental nudge to overcome that inertia and get moving.
It's like a mantra to break free from procrastination. And once you're in motion, it's all about single-handling every task. Start it, work on it without interruption, and finish it before moving on to something else.
This is where I struggle. I'm a notorious multitasker, always switching between tasks and projects. But I've heard that multitasking can actually decrease productivity.
You've heard right. Tracy points out that starting and stopping actually makes work take longer, sometimes up to 500%.
Well, that's a huge cost to multitasking. Starting to rethink my whole approach.
Think about all the time we waste switching gears, getting back up to speed, and refocusing our attention. Single-handling tasks is about harnessing the power of focused effort.
It's like entering that flow state, where you're completely absorbed in the task, and time seems to melt away.
Exactly. And Tracy even suggests that single-handling tasks is a true test of character.
It's about developing self-discipline.
Yeah.
And the ability to follow through on our commitments.
Precisely. It's about becoming the kind of person who makes a decision and sticks to it, no matter what distractions or temptations come along.
This is powerful stuff. But what about those of us who struggle with self-motivation? Does Tracy offer any advice for those days when we just can't seem to get going?
He does. He reminds us that 95% of our emotions stem from how we talk to ourselves.
So if we're constantly berating ourselves or focusing on our shortcomings, we're setting ourselves up for failure. It's like we're our own worst enemies.
Exactly. And the good news is we can choose to be our own best cheerleaders instead. Tracy is a firm believer in the power of positive self-talk.
I've heard about the benefits of affirmations, but sometimes they feel a bit cheesy. How does Tracy approach this?
It's about consciously replacing negative self-talk. with positive, empowering statements. Remind yourself of your strengths, your past successes, and your ability to overcome challenges.
So instead of saying, I can't do this, it's about shifting to, I've done difficult things before, and I can do this too.
Exactly. And another key to self-motivation is focusing on solutions, not problems. When faced with a challenge, don't dwell on what's wrong. Instead, ask yourself, what can I do to improve this situation?
It's about taking ownership and becoming an active participant in creating the outcome you want.
Precisely. And finally, Tracy emphasizes that optimism is a choice. It's not about denying challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to see the good in every situation, even the difficult ones.
It's about looking for the lessons, the opportunities for growth, and maintaining a positive outlook, even when things get tough.
Exactly. It's about believing in your ability to overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Now let's talk about those tasks we really dread, those frogs that we just can't seem to swallow. Does Tracy have any advice for tackling these?
He does. He has this idea of creative procrastination.
Oh, that's a good one.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's like giving yourself permission to not do things, but strategically.
Yes. It's about being intentional with your procrastination rather than just letting it happen to you.
Right.
So Tracy's point is that you can't do everything. There are simply not enough hours in the day. So you have to be very selective about what you put off.
So it's almost like saying no to certain things in order to say yes to the things that really matter.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about prioritizing and recognizing that some tasks are simply not worth your time and energy.
And this ties back to that 80-20 rule we were talking about earlier, focusing on those high-impact activities and letting go of the things that don't really move the needle.
Precisely. It's about being strategic with your time and energy and making sure you're investing them in the areas that will yield the greatest returns.
This is making me realize that procrastination isn't always a bad thing. It's how we use it that determines whether it's helpful or harmful.
Absolutely. It's about making conscious choices and being deliberate about what you choose to put off.
Okay, so we've talked about creative procrastination, but what about those tasks that we just can't avoid? Those big, ugly frogs that we know we have to eat. Does Tracy offer any specific advice for tackling those?
He does, and his advice is surprisingly simple. Eat the frog first.
Meaning?
Do your most important task first thing in the morning, before you do anything else.
Okay, so this goes against what a lot of people do.
Right.
It does. A lot of people like to ease into their day, start with smaller, easier tasks. But Tracy argues that that's a mistake. Because you have the most willpower and energy in the morning. So it's the best time to tackle those tough tasks. So it's like getting the hardest thing out of the way first, so you can enjoy the rest of your day without that looming over you.
Exactly. It's like eating your vegetables before you get to dessert.
I like that analogy.
It makes sense, right?
It does. So by tackling those big, challenging tasks first thing in the morning, we not only get them out of the way, but we also build momentum and set a positive tone for the rest of the day.
Precisely. It's a win-win.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into Eat That Frog. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools and strategies to tackle procrastination and achieve those big, scary goals that have been lurking in the back of my mind.
I'm glad to hear that. Tracy's work is truly transformative, and his principles are timeless.
They really are. So as we wrap up this episode, what's one final piece of advice you would offer to our listeners who are eager to start eating their frogs?
And living more productive and fulfilling lives.
Just start quite a while. One small step at a time is all it takes. Don't get overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. Break it down into manageable chunks and take action. Action is key. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into conquering procrastination with Eat That Frog. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, happy frog eating